Hey everybody, and welcome to another video on the Nintendo Switch. Today I want to take a look at two games that are going to be coming out in the upcoming summer, and that is Splatoon 2 and ARMS. Now the reason I want to focus on these two games is because ever since the Nintendo Switch has been announced, these have been two games that Nintendo has been talking about quite a bit. In fact, it was just last month in April when they actually had a whole Nintendo Direct that was pretty much entirely devoted to these two games, on top of a couple of other things. But these were the two main Switch games that they talked about. So it seems like Nintendo's putting a lot of effort and care into these two projects. And that could be huge, because if these two games come out good, since they're both online multiplayer experiences, that could be enough to hold people over until the end of the year when games like Fire Emblem Warriors and Super Mario Odyssey come out. So these two games coming out good and having a good online experience are crucial for the Nintendo Switch in the coming year. So, with that said, let's start by taking a look at ARMS. So for once, I'm going to try to start off on a more positive note. Now this game, if you don't know, is a motion-controlled boxing game, and I will say that the Nintendo Switch has amazing motion controls. I've played 1-2 Switch quite a bit with my friends and whatnot, and when you move the controller around, it's very responsive to your motions, it's very sensitive too. It notices even slight movements, but in a good way. I don't mean that in a bad way, I mean that as a good thing. So the motion controls work very, very well. I can't think of any occasion where I really noticed that they weren't working well. So pretty much, I'll say like 99% of the time, the motion controls are responsive and they work well. It is much, much better than what the Nintendo Wii had. And this is a good thing, because ARMS is pretty much entirely motion controlled. It's a boxing game where you actually have to punch and move and stuff. And so because of this, it is very important that the motion controls work well. But the good thing is, it looks like they will. And on top of this, ARMS seems like it's taken a note from Splatoon 2 in that they're having a lot of different customization. You can switch different looks on your character, the weapons can switch from character to character, and there's a lot of different weapons that do a lot of different things in the game. And so because of this, it looks like there is a bit of variety in terms of how you can play the game. So it seems like it can make a very fun party game, which is what Nintendo does best. They do really good as far as fun party games like this go. And one of the major things, and I already kind of mentioned this at the beginning of this video, is that this game is going to have an online multiplayer mode. And that is huge, especially since this is a fighting game. Even though it's a lot different from games like Mortal Kombat or Smash Bros, it's still a fighting game at its core. And a fighting game without an online mode is kind of dumb. Especially in this day and age, that would make no sense. So it's good that Nintendo has this online experience for the game. Now, it's important that it doesn't lag. Nintendo has had a bit of problems in terms of lag with some of their previous games. Hopefully ARMS doesn't have these problems, especially since Nintendo's going to start charging people to play games online. But I'm going to choose to have faith in Nintendo with this one. So those are all the positive things that I want to talk about. But on top of those, there are a couple of concerns that I have. These aren't necessarily negatives, because nothing has been confirmed about this game, because obviously it hasn't been released. But I do have a couple of concerns that I just want to make clear about whether or not ARMS will be successful. And the first one is the different game modes that will be in the game. Now again, you're looking at all this different boxing footage, but that's really all there is. There's nothing else on the game. There doesn't seem to be extra minigame modes, there doesn't seem to be a story mode or anything like that. So I do have a couple of questions on how long this game will be fun to play. Now again, there is a couple of other things, like how competitive people will take this game and things like that. But in terms of just the different game modes, there doesn't seem like there's going to be a whole lot. And this is kind of disappointing. Now I shouldn't say it because we don't know for sure. There could be a story mode. And I think it'd be very easy to do something like Pokken or like Punch-Out, where you just sort of have a gauntlet where you face different characters in the game. I think that would be super easy to do. I think that could be a little bit of fun. It doesn't have to be expansive. I don't need some detailed Mortal Kombat or Soul Calibur story. I just need something small. Just a little gauntlet where you make up random names for characters and have me fight against them. I think that would be a lot of fun. Because Nintendo has to keep in mind, since they're charging for their online experience, a lot of people probably won't be able to pay for it. And so they might just have to settle for single player offline gameplay. And if that is the case, they need to have enough stuff to do for someone that's playing the game by themselves. And that can be easily rectified if you have a fun story mode with the game. And so if ARMS has that, that's a major, major plus, at least in my opinion. On top of this, it's important that this game is at least somewhat competitive. Now I know that sounds weird, and you're probably looking at this game saying, why in the world would this game be a competitive game? I mean, it's a motion control game for one. I don't think there's a single MLG tournament style game that is based off of motion controls, at least none that I can think of. So what makes me think that that is a possibility? Well, the reason that I feel that way is because without it, this game could get boring kind of fast. Even with online game modes, if it just kind of plays like a fun, quirky party game, it might get old kind of fast. I mean, if you look at Nintendo's games that don't have fun, competitive online, they get kind of dull. I mean, that's what 1-2 Switch essentially was, right? Just some fun donkey party game. However, it got boring kind of fast. And that's what this game could end up like. And the reason I say that is because there's not a lot of variety. Nintendo does have other party games that aren't competitive, games like Mario Party and Mario Kart, but the difference is those games have a lot of different ways you can play them. ARMS doesn't. ARMS is just boxing. And that will get old if there's no incentive to get better at it. See, if they have competitive leaderboards, if they have ranking systems where you sort of level up as you go, or if they have incentives to win, things like that, even if they just keep track of your win-loss record, that could be enough to motivate people to practice with a game like this and face people online. If they had like a special tournament mode even, kind of like what they do with Mario Kart, I think that could be a huge hit for ARMS. So those are just a couple of things that I think I need to see in ARMS for the game to not be repetitive. Since this game is coming out and it's just boxing and it's still coming out at the full $60, you have to convince me that there's enough variety in this game to keep me around for a long period of time. Now, can they do that? Of course. They've given me no reason not to believe in them with this game, because I don't want to be super negative. They haven't. Obviously, they're not going to announce every single game mode in the game before it comes out, but it's just something to keep in mind. So that's ARMS. Now let's take a look at Splatoon 2. And again, I'm going to start off by being positive with this one, especially because it's Splatoon, which is a very successful game that came out on the Wii U, so I should be more positive with this one. The good thing about Splatoon 2 is it looks very similar to Splatoon 1. That's both a positive and a negative, but we'll get to the negative of that later. But the good thing about this is if it isn't broke, why fix it? Splatoon 1 was a very successful game. It's a game that's played at a competitive level for some people. It's not super MLG, of course, but a lot of people enjoy this game. In Japan, I know it's super popular and super fun to play. I have a lot of friends that are in love with this game and play the online for it non-stop. It's a shooter, but it's different than Call of Duty, right? I think that's the cool thing about it is it's sort of its own genre of shooter. And so Splatoon was a very fun and very successful game. And the good thing about Splatoon 2 is they're adding in a lot more modes. One of the first modes they're adding in is something called Salmon Run, which is a co-op mode where you actually work together with a buddy. This is something they didn't have in the first game, right? The first game was essentially just team matches or 1v1 stuff. They didn't have a lot of co-op stuff. And so that's a very cool game mode they're adding. And they're also adding a couple of extra stuff for people to do local. And they're also doing up to 8 people in local multiplayer. So that is a huge plus too, something that the original Splatoon didn't have. There really weren't many options for local multiplayer in the original Splatoon, so it's good they're adding that stuff in. And the problem is this game looks too similar to Splatoon 1. If you're looking at the screen right now, you're seeing two different games, and you might be able to tell which one is which just by the layout of the trailer and stuff. But outside of that, these games look exactly the same. That's my biggest fear, is that people are going to look at Splatoon 2 and say it's not different enough. And as a result of that, they're not going to buy a Nintendo Switch to play the game, because why would they? It's exactly the same as Splatoon 1. See, this is sort of what happened with Mario Kart 8. Mario Kart 8 got revamped into Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. They added a couple of courses for battle mode. They added battle mode, which is a new thing. They added a couple characters, a couple different customizations, a couple different skins, things like that, and they called it Deluxe. Splatoon 2 seems to be doing kind of the same thing, isn't it? They added a brand new mode, which is like the battle mode equivalent with Salmon Run. They added a couple new customization, a couple new weapons, a couple new maps, and then they're calling it a sequel. So is it really Splatoon 2, or is it just kind of like a Splatoon Deluxe version? And I'm not saying that to diss Nintendo, and I don't want to make Splatoon fans mad here, because I'm going to buy Splatoon 2, and I'm going to love the heck out of it. But I'm saying this from the perspective of someone that's deciding whether or not they want to buy the Nintendo Switch. Are they going to look at Splatoon 2 and say, wow, that is such an upgrade over the game that I own that I have to own that? I don't know. And that's the major question that I have in terms of Splatoon 2. Now, one of the ways you can rectify this is have a bunch of new game modes. Maybe you don't need to have too much, but if you can add just enough to make me think, oh, wow, that looks like a really fun game mode that I can't normally do, that would be a huge plus, I think. Now, I'm not asking for them to do too much, and I don't want them to change the basic mechanics. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I think it's a good thing this game is very similar to Splatoon 1. But as long as they can add a couple of extra game modes and maybe a couple of new gameplay mechanics to the game as well, I think that's all this game needs. However, as far as Splatoon 2 goes, I don't really have a whole lot of problems. If you own a Nintendo Switch, I think this game is worth getting. However, if you don't own a Nintendo Switch yet, I don't know if Splatoon 2 will be a system seller. That is something we'll have to wait to see until it comes out. So to summarize, both of these games look like they have a lot of potential. The only thing at this point is we just have to hope and pray that these two games come out good. ARMS and Splatoon 2 both are going to be huge system sellers for this game. And if they don't turn out as good as they should, that can be a huge knock for Nintendo moving forward. Because at this point, if these two don't come out good, it's a long way till we get another game. Fingers crossed, but I have a lot of faith in these two games, and that's a big thing. Because Splatoon 1, when it first was announced, I wasn't a huge fan of it, and then it came out and blew my mind. So who knows, maybe ARMS and Splatoon 2 both will do absolutely amazing. I'm confident they will, but I'm really hopeful because if these two games do good, that will really help boost the Nintendo Switch moving forward. So with that, I think I'm going to end this video. Let me know what you guys think of these, if you guys agree or disagree with what I said, how you feel about these two games. If you own a Nintendo Switch, are you going to be purchasing these games when they come out? Let me know. Anything you want to let me know. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.